Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Tonight we have with us two very interesting gentlemen. Arron Blackburn and Jason Smith are with us, and they are both very seasoned when it comes to various aspects of not only just the paranormal, but what they do to capture the paranormal. But before we get into that interview, why don't we sit back just for a moment and learn just a little bit more about both of them, my special guests, Arron Blackburn and Jason Smith. We have two very interesting guests with us this evening, Arron Blackburn and Jason Smith. Arron Blackburn is the co-founder of Out West Paranormal, a dedicated investigative team committed to exploring haunted locations, uncovering unexplained phenomena, and preserving the history tied to paranormal activity across the American West. With a lifelong fascination for the unknown, Arron has built a reputation for blending curiosity, professionalism, and respect for the spiritual world into every investigation. Having explored historical locations in the Southwest to the Northeast and Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, he looks to add history to everlasting adventure. Now let's turn to Jason Smith. Jason is a prominent voice in the paranormal field, bringing a unique blend of investigative experience and production expertise to his work. He is the official videographer and editor of Out West Paranormal and the co-host of the popular podcast Unraveling the Darkness. His interest in the unknown began early, but he officially started his investigative career in 2008 by founding the Paranormal Investigation Team Wyoming. Through his work, Jason built a reputation as a meticulous investigator, with his work on the Nights of Pythias even being chronicled in Jill Pope's book, Haunted Cheyenne. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and enjoy yourself as we welcome to the show Arron Blackburn and Jason Smith. Well, good evening, gentlemen, and thank you so very much for being on the show today. Today we have Arron Blackburn and Jason Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's great to have you. I have met and actually been on your show quite a while ago, but they have a very, very interesting show. And so at the end of this one, we'll give some information, and we would like you to pop on over there and take a listen and watch. I can't remember, gentlemen, visual or audio only?
Visual.
Visual, okay, and we'll direct you to where you can find that. So as I usually do in all of my interviews, let's start with the foundation question, and whichever one of you wants to take it first, go back to the earliest time you can remember, when you may have had a paranormal experience or some experience or interest. I have to add that in there, and we'll take it from there.
So I think the earliest for me is going to be somewhere around 7, 8 years old. I grew up going back and forth between Wyoming and South Dakota, growing up on a reservation in a very influential family, and then sleeping in the living room on the couch and hearing footsteps throughout the house. Raised in a traditional Lakota family, of course, all the ceremonies and all the spiritual work that they were doing definitely gave me the interest into the paranormal. And then upon meeting my wife and realizing she had it, that's when we started the group.
Did you say your wife had abilities or interest in it too?
Yeah, she's a sensitive. She's probably the sensitive in our group, and definitely gets spirit communication. She hears it and then says what she hears, and we get some great back and forth with spirits that way. And then we do a double Estes, and usually anymore we're using her and Jason, and they are like this super antenna to where we stop asking questions and they'll start talking back and forth. The spirits will start talking back and forth between them.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to continue with you, Arron, for a moment, and then Jason will get to you in a second. So when you were growing up and you had heard footsteps and everything like that, and it brought up an intrigue with this subject in general, how old do you think you were, and did that carry throughout your younger years, teen years, adult? Did you really get into it when you met your wife, or what do you think was your peak where you just kind of knew you wanted to kind of stay in your observation of all of this?
So I was probably about 7 when that started. And then my grandma always told me, she's like, no, nothing is here to harm you. They're just here to look after you. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then never really did anything with it. In 2013, when Gina and I met, we realized we both had an interest in the paranormal. We went and did for an anniversary, went to Salt Lake City and did a ghost tour, and then investigated the Fear Factory. So together we did. In fact, I even proposed on a ghost tour in Prescott, Arizona. So, the interest was there for both of us. In 2020, we started way Out West Paranormal, and then we were able to bring Jason in to do that with his experience that he had.
And if you were to, so you mentioned that she's got some abilities, obviously. What type of abilities have you evolved in your abilities at all over the years? Because I know I have, by being so immersed in what I do. I'm like a beacon and an open antenna now. I can't turn it off, quite honestly. What kind of abilities do you have? Or are you more of the logical one where you're kind of debating what actually went on? What would you say?
I kind of feel like the more we get into this and the more we do, I'm sensing more stuff. It's not a hear or a visual or anything like that, but like you can walk into the room and get that. I get an electric feeling, where it's like that
tingling.
That energy is touching you, and you're getting this not shivering, but almost like a shaking feeling. So I feel the more we do, I'm getting that. I am definitely more an equipment person, which coincides with like the stuff we get from Gina and all that. But like, I feel that you bond to a piece of equipment, and you use it so much. Yeah. So the spirit box is definitely the connection for me.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up, because I have bonded with my K2 meters. Now, I know people have their opinions about K2 meters, but you said the very thing that I do talk about periodically, especially at conferences, and that's when you're dealing with your equipment. I haven't really used a lot of equipment in my time of being a beacon. But my K2 meter, for some reason, I've got 2 of them, and I use them enough where I can kind of sense whether it might be an electrical issue, possibly, or picking up on something like that. But more so in different areas with the K2, when I'm moving, I try not to move it around too much. I would rather just have it just stay still. But I can kind of tell from the bubbles that go up and down or whatever, whether or not it seems to be an electrical issue or some interference or something like that. What kind of the equipment that you have bonded to, what do you think you've bonded to the most?
I'm an audio guy, so I really like, EVPs. So probably my digital recorder and then the spirit box.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Now I'm going to ask this question of you. And then, Jason, I promise I'll get to you.
No worries.
So, one of the things that I am wondering about, and I don't know what your opinion would be on this or perspective, can a person actually influence their equipment? Because it's like, like you say, EVPs and things like that. Can a person that you know of influence their equipment to the point where it's giving you responses that you might think might be coming from some other place, but it's actually coming from you? Do you know what I'm talking about here?
I kind of get what you're saying. It goes for me now. Now this is where I'm going to contradict Jason a little bit, or maybe I agree with him. We'll figure this out. So the Ovilus, right? The Ovilus has a word bank, and they say that they can use their energy to pick these words, right? So then you go to apps. If you put it in airplane mode, it's the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. But let's move this over to like a digital recorder. It's an electronic piece. It is what it is. We can't influence it, right? Not like, something that's getting waves to change or pick a word from a word bank. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that you could influence like a digital recorder. As far as a spirit box, it's really kind of no different than like an Ovilus. Maybe you can influence words to come through, but again, it's a piece of electronic that is built to do what it does. And unless you go in and manually change it, I don't think you could influence anything.
I had an interesting experience, and I brought this up to another gentleman he's really big into the EVP thing, and I said, is it possible to be able to get a residual EVP comment or response over your equipment? I'll give you the example of what happened. So my grandparents' property by their barn. One year, years back, I was out ghost searching, hunting, whatever you want to call it. And on my word bank, I can't remember what I was using at the time, it gave me these words like smoking, army, this and that. Okay. So from those little words, I put together that I was either talking intelligently to somebody that was trying to tell me their story, and then I put the or on the side because at the time I thought it was intelligence, and that property was very haunted, so it didn't surprise me if it was intelligent. However, what I found very interesting was a few years later, before the property was burned down because it was all in disarray. Everything has its time. It was a century home and it had to go, and barn. I was in the same spot, and lo and behold, these same words came out of my word bank again. Probably not the exact same way, but they might have been. Same thing, army, cigarette or smoking or whatever. And I just kind of went like this, and I thought, well, how long are you going to be standing in this spot for, if you're intelligent, for the rest of your life? And that's when me and this other gentleman that, I was on his show had said, was that a residual situation? Because it was exactly the same spot, exactly the same words, but not necessarily an intelligent energy. So I'm gonna open this up, and then we'll get to you, Jason. Jason, you can jump in on this too if you want to. Arron, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts? Have you ever had a residual EVP session where you knew it probably was not intelligent, but somehow stuck in this particular area and was residual? What are your thoughts?
That is pretty interesting. I don't know that. I mean, you get residual video or visual, right? Because you have something that goes the same time every day or every year or every whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I don't see why you couldn't have a residual audio to go along with that.
I think it's totally possible. I think, energy is energy, right? If you're using a video recorder, and it presents that way, you'll catch it. But I think you could definitely catch an EVP. I haven't done it with Arron in Way Out West Paranormal yet, but I've got a place that, I've been investigating since like 2008. I've got keys to the building. I'm there almost every weekend. And I'll set recorders up to run overnight. And I get a lot of the same sounds every time I run the recorders. Mm-hmm. I'll have these very loud footsteps, and then you'll hear something being dropped on the floor, and you hear it bounce. So you hear the initial thud, and then boom, 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 right? As it like settles to the floor. I'll have cameras running, and nothing moves in that room. Nothing fell on the floor, nothing like that. So that is a good point. That may be something residual that I'm catching, because it does seem to be the same sounds every time I do that. And this is, a point. The building's empty, and like I said, I've got cameras set up most of the time, so no one's coming into the area. So without an object physically moving, it's almost got to be residual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's just so strange how right in it's kind of like sometimes I wonder how it didn't seem I don't know, maybe it was traumatizing, maybe there was something going on physically in this person's body, but it was so strange to be in the exact same area and having the exact same words come out. And it's like, I just couldn't imagine there was no pain involved at the time, or maybe there was pain, maybe there was agony. What exactly was it about that situation and saying those words and all that stuck right in that spot? Now, if I were to go there, well, of course, everything's burned down now. It's all field. It turned into a cornfield. I could probably figure out, for the most part, where that place was within the cornfield if I had permission to go in there. But it's just, it's just so strange on why things stick and some things don't. And like you're saying with the noises, I've heard that in bed and breakfasts before. Some things where in the bathroom it would sound like something was taking out somebody's products, women's products, and they're falling and rolling on the floor or something, but nothing would ever have fallen, nothing would ever have moved. It's almost to me like a luring kind of a situation, depending on where you are. I don't know. It's very, very interesting. All right, Jason, well, you're up now. Where did things kind of start for you? Where did all this begin?
Yeah, so it started pretty young for me, just like Arron, probably, the age 6 to 8 range. At that point, I was growing up in Vermont. We lived out in the middle of nowhere. My best friend lived in it was an old house that used to be a church and then a school. And you'd stay over at his house. They still had the bells, up in the bell tower. And it would take both of us. We used to love going up there, to the top floor, and there'd be this rope coming down from the attic, and we'd both jump on it, pull as hard as you can and get the bells going. And I would stay the night at his house, and these bells would just start going off in the middle of the night. And instead of being scared, him and I both kind of jumped into it, and just, became obsessed. Right across the street from his house was, an old cemetery with graves from like the late 1700s. And, we would dare each other in the middle of the night. We'd sneak out of the house and, who can go to the very top of the graveyard, and this was out in the middle of the woods. So it's pitch black, heavy woods on all 3 sides of the graveyard, and it would be a contest to who could go to the very top of the graveyard at the back by the woods. And then that led into, I always say this is a big gateway drug for people in the paranormal, because, doing our podcast, there's so many people that have read this book, but the old Reader's Digest, The Strange Stories, Amazing Facts. It was like this, big 3-inch book of just everything crazy that's happened in the world, right? Yeah. And that was like my Bible when I was a kid. I would just scour those pages. I had they were all folded over and, drawn on with pencil, circling stuff. And I just, I absorbed this stuff. And then, I found the old Oosborne books, the how to view you or how to catch UFOs and, how to catch a ghost and all that stuff. And yeah, I just really threw myself into it at a young age, and it never stopped.
Did you ever catch some flack about that when you're in school, or did you just not talk about it?
So I did catch flack, especially, like elementary, middle school, they'd make fun of you and stuff like that. So for a while I did end up, just, it was something personal I did and I didn't talk about it. I would go to spooky places and just kind of explore. And, this was back before we had any of the, real equipment. So I think maybe at that point when I was a teenager, I had like one of the old, cassette tape recorders, the little mini ones for meetings. Yeah. My dad had one because he used to be like a detective in the police force, and he had given me that one. And so that's really all I had. And I would go out and try to catch stuff. And I don't think I ever really even caught anything, but it was just the act of being somewhere that, there's something other than yourself there. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the cemetery. I'm also thinking about your clairs. Do you have sensitivities? It's because you immerse yourself in this so young, and you put yourself in a lot of places that probably had a variety of energies. Have you found yourself becoming, I'm not going to use the words, maybe skilled? You can acknowledge that maybe you're clairaudient, you can hear better or smell or anything like that. What clairs do you think you have?
So, as far back as I can remember, I've always just said trust your gut. I've always had that, that feeling in the pit of your stomach when something bad's going on. And my mom's side of the family has always had it very strongly. We'll call each other sometimes in the middle of the night. Hey, everything okay? Oh no, this has been going on. And then it really started kind of being hammered home to me when I was being deployed in the military and overseas doing what we were doing over there. And there's sometimes you're getting ready to go out the gate and I'm just like, man, something's not right. Something's going to happen. And, more times than not, something would. And, it was enough that people would call it Smitty's radar. They'd be like, Smitty, is your radar pinging today?
Mm-hmm.
Cause yeah, a lot of times I could just, bad vibes. Really working with Arron and Gina more, as Arron said with the double Estes. Things are getting a little stronger. It's still, I don't see or hear anything, but I think I'm definitely being tuned in more to the empath side of it. Mm-hmm. And to give an example, I'll do double Estes all day, every day. I mean, normally we go for about 45 minutes, during a double Estes session with me and Gina. Mm-hmm. We had an investigation a couple weeks ago that I didn't make it 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. I would see this black, even though I had a blindfold on, I would see this black spot come at me. And then all of a sudden I could taste blood in the back of my throat and like this crushing in my chest. And it was enough to cause a pretty big, anxiety reaction for me. Like, oh God, is this what's going on with me? Do I need to have Arron take me to the hospital? At least he used to be a paramedic, so I'm good. And I breathe through it. And then a couple minutes later, come back again. I mean, just like a slap in the face. And, the other member of our team started doing some research and found that there was a teenage girl that died in a car accident right outside the building. Mm-hmm. And, I really think that I was picking up on, her pain, her feelings in her last moments. Mm-hmm. So yeah, long story short, I think I'm definitely becoming more of an empath.
Mm-hmm. So
I'd like to jump in real quick on that, because honestly, Jason, in the last year and a half or 2 years, like you've even during the Estes, and you say, like, I remember the first time you're like, I don't see things, but I'm getting this vision in my head as I'm hearing this stuff. So you're also getting that mind, that theater in your mind where it's showing stuff.
Yep. And it's only during double Estes, which is weird. But yeah, that is a good point, because we did do one at a museum, and all of a sudden it was like a slap in the face. I was just like, bam, right in front of me, this waterfall, up on a mountain with a tree on each side of the waterfall. See it clear as day, like I was there. And at the same time I'm describing this, Gina's sitting there hollering, he sees, when she's got a blindfold and headphones on too, because she's doing the other part of the double Estes. But that's the only time I will have visuals is, during an Estes session. Other than that, not at all.
Okay, so now for those of you who are watching this and listening to this, and you're not familiar with what an Estes session involves or whatever, which one of you would like to describe when they say an Estes session, describe what is happening and what you're doing and what you're hoping for, like the outcomes or some of the things that you can pick up?
Yeah, so I think everyone knows what the spirit box is. It's the radio that will scan without stopping, right? And it uses the white noise in between the channel steps, that a spirit can, theoretically project their voice so you can actually hear it. So an Estes session is when you take that spirit box and you put noise canceling headphones on and a blindfold on. So you remove all your senses except for, hearing, and the other people ask questions, and then you vocalize what you are hearing through the headphones.
But you can't hear them ask the question at the time, right?
No, all you hear is that, the spirit box. That's it.
Yeah. And so everything is completely, whatever you're picking up on. And they can be asking you this question from other rooms or other places too, right?
Yep. Correct. Yeah. And that's something we've talked about, is toying around with, doing kind of remote Estes sessions, seeing how that works.
Yeah. And so these visions that you pick up, so you're sitting there, you've got a blindfold on, you've got your noise canceling headphones or the equipment over your ears. And I would presume for the first few minutes anyway, you're looking at blackness or just darkness, right?
Yep. Pitch black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. And then all you hear is the like I said, the spirit box going. And then, when we do it, we take it a step further, and we have a spirit box. It's the SB11 that allows two outputs at once, and it's two separate radios in one box. So Gina's not hearing the same thing I am. She's scanning on a completely different radio. So yeah, and that's where it gets interesting, where we'll start talking back and forth, because then you start getting into what are the mathematical odds of, being able to have a multi-word conversation, from two different radios scanning at different steps and a different direction. Interesting.
Arron, how long has Gina been doing this method for?
It's something that we started when we started Way Out West. So 2020, we started Way Out West Paranormal. And then I really think the first time would probably be like within a year of us starting. And then, of course, as we continue and brought Jason in, realizing those two are a superconductor, it's been pretty great for us.
And when you guys are together, when she and you, Jason, are together, are you trying to pick up just things that have happened in the environment or things that have happened to people in general, or just whatever comes in? Because obviously you're sitting at a particular location, or even if you're separate, you're still at some kind of environmental location, I presume, or you're focused on that location. You could probably be remotely, like you said, you might be doing this more, in other places. So what kinds of things are you trying to delve up? And Arron, jump in with what kinds of things she may have had before meeting Jason, because yes, it's very true. I know what you're talking about, being a superconductor. I have been in a room with 200 extremely sensitive empaths / psychically inclined individuals where everyone had, and that, believe it or not, enhanced my remote viewing skills, as oddly as that sounds. And I was able to remote view things that I couldn't remote view if I tried now. But in that room, though, with the right people around me, it was almost like a really weird human battery that really brought me to another level of, it was just very interesting. So I understand the way you can really do that. So, Arron, when did she start doing this, or was she doing this from a psychic viewpoint first, and then what kinds of things was she trying to pick up, like when she did this, when she met you and all that?
When you ask her, she's always been sensitive, or she's always had some kind of things going on. I think starting the group and really like honing in on what we do has really helped her to bring that sensitivity forward. And I don't know, the connection between her and Jason when they do this is just, I've seen it on, with different people, but I just don't see the connection that these two have when they get together. Mm-hmm. We've been to a couple locations where I'm asking the questions and they're sitting there, and I stop asking the questions because they just start going back and forth. And I'm like, I don't even need to talk anymore. I'll just let them. I think I think you asked Jason the question, but I think it goes with this. Depending on where we are is kind of how we tune in to what we're doing or where we're going with questioning. If we're in a location where we're filming and we're just there to investigate, we're usually looking to the history of it, and we're going on that history side and trying to see what we can get, which we've connected to stuff on that. Or the one the other week that Jason was talking about, that place has had some issues with stuff breaking and just a lot of things going on within. They just opened in July, so a lot of things going on since then. So they were really trying to see, what's causing this stuff. Oh, and these two, we really got to know when he started having that feeling of everything and came out, and then we kind of, we only had Gina under, so then we were able to ask her questions while Michelle was doing some research, So it's really a combination of things to be able to get things rolling when you're doing this.
Interesting. Jason, how do you feel when you're working with Gina? Do you feel like your senses have gone? Can you literally feel your senses strengthening? Like she's got some kind of interesting connecting spark that somehow, because I could feel it. I could feel it in that room with all those people. I felt myself. I could do things in that room that were shocking to me, because moving things without even, with my mind, without even doing anything. It's a long story, but I'm just saying we were all under an experiment, individual experiments to move something, and I literally with my mind could control this, as a piece of tinfoil on a needle. I could go that way, I could go that way, but I literally could control. Wow. Yeah, I did, because I was with such a human battery of just sorts. I was like, there are times I just thought, okay, go backwards, and just on command in my mind, it'd go backwards. So that's what I'm going to ask you next is like, so you see these things. I was going to ask just a general question that, have you guys ever been asked to investigate for a police department, or people getting murdered, or people not being found, or where did they go, or things like that? Have you been ever approached yet to psychically or do cases? Have you been down that road yet?
No, we haven't. And to kind of go on the, how do I feel when I'm doing like a Estes with Gina? I think you hit it right on the head. You said human battery. And when I first started doing the double Estes with Gina, that's what I would jokingly call her was, all right, get my Estes battery over here and let's do this, and then when I go into an Estes, I kind of try to, I'm not big on like meditation and stuff like that, but I try to get myself into close of a state of that as possible. Really, I try to stay neutral and just, kind of, close my eyes. Obviously, I got the blindfold on and just take a couple deep breaths, be like, okay, I'm here to listen. I'm opening myself up now. Bring it. And it's like sometimes it's slow to start, but then, you'll kind of, I don't know, you can just feel the energy change. And then it's like, all right, we're going to pick up here, and then responses start coming in and all that. But I really try to just stay neutral and not try to think about, with the responses I'm getting, what questions could be asked, right? Because then that can kind of start to taint things, even though, all your senses are removed. You still have your power of thought, right? And that's actually, it can be pretty darn powerful. I just try to stay real neutral and just anything I see, hear, feel, I just call it out and, it's either evidence or it's not. So
have you ever picked up, and this is also same question if Gina has mentioned it to you, Arron, have you ever picked up anything so negative that you just knew that you better stop, or has it ever any energy ever attempted to try to not go beyond, I guess, go beyond channeling? I have a crack in me somewhere. I know that when something thinks it's going to slip inside me or channel me or get to me, it does. And people see it and they can tell by looking at me that something's not right and stuff like that. So do you run those risks of having energies that may not be on the more nice side, or things like what you're trying to attempt to slip into either Gina or you, whichever one to jump in first? So
I've never really had like a spirit, that I feel tried to step inside me or channel through me, besides what I'm asking for when doing an Estes, right? Which I do personally see that as a form of channeling. Because if not, I think you're just listening to a radio, right? Like you've got to open yourself up and you kind of become that antenna for that energy to, flow through and give you those responses. The worst I've had was the one I was talking about from a couple weeks ago with that teenager that died. And I don't think she was intentionally putting that onto me. I really felt, and I think we all agreed on this at the end of the investigation, she was terrified. She was frustrated and she could not control her energy. And I think anytime she tried to communicate, just all that came out. And, it was like me getting hit by that car over and over again. I know Arron can speak more to I think, being influenced and channeled with Gina, though.
For Gina, during an Estes, no. Nothing during an Estes as far as anything trying to do that. 3 times I've seen her take on a different personality. One was at an old courthouse and jail, and when we got around the jail, she's like, oh yeah, there was some pretty bad, and she got a little mouthy, like she was taking in that, and I was like, okay, we need to step away and get over to this area. Another time was an investigation in Nebraska. We were really getting into a spirit box session, and all of a sudden she's like, I really do not like you guys right now. I really want to hit somebody. I do not, I can't stand you guys. And we had her step away and step outside, and I went down and we, talked through it, and it's just something was a little more powerful than normal. Another one was more playful. We were investigating the building that Jason has the keys to. I like to call it our home haunt because, with Jason being a member, hey, let's go investigate. We go down, we investigate. So we're doing an event, and we never take people through this one area. In the basement of this building, it's the Knights of Pythias building in Cheyenne, Wyoming. and Jason's a member of the Knights. And they have a haunted house in the basement that they raise money for the community with. So we have a little girl that's in the basement. We don't know why she's there. It's something we're still trying to figure out. And she's in the maze part of it. So we never take people through the maze. We always lead them like behind the maze because it's just going through, and it is what it is. So we decided we're going to go through the maze tonight with this group. And we're taking them in, and I was like, okay, y'all go, and I'll hit the back, and I'll make sure everyone's moving. And I didn't realize that Gina and Michelle had gone the other way, not hearing us say we're going through the maze. We're going to the room at the end of the maze. Michelle's waiting in there. Jason had heard something. He's like, someone's out. So he had gone back and was walking into that room. And Michelle's standing there like, where's Gina? Where's Gina? And Gina's like tucked away in this little tiny room, like he. And I think that this little girl that we talked to was like, had a little impression on her to where she wanted to play a trick or wanted to do something, and she was using Gina. But never anything malicious. Never during an Estes have we had to do that. Just those times. And that's in, the 13 years of us being together.
Wow. The thing is, that's a long time, and doing investigation work. Have you ever, and everyone always wants to know, have you ever run into anything so negative or traumatic, or where you just stopped and said, I don't want to continue to investigate something? Or are you more thick-skinned where you'll try to investigate something to its end? Have you ever had any overly frightening experiences?
I think I have two to speak on. The first one, we had Jason and I were doing a private with a couple of people at the Knights. The same room that we end in at the end of the maze, we were growled at. Everything there has really been friendly. They'll get a little tired of us. We'll spend a lot of time in a room. They'll get a little tired of us, and they'll be like, "Demon," and we're like, "You're not a demon."
Right.
Like, if you want us just to move on, just say you're done.
Just say
or they'll be like, "Hell," or what, and we're like, "Stop now." Like, come on. So I growled, and everyone was pretty quiet for about 10 seconds. And one of the girls was like, "Was that a growl?" And yeah, can we leave? And we moved along. The other would be Dumas Brothel in Butte, Montana. We investigated there, and the basement is it's a completely different place than we've ever investigated. Definitely some darker stuff down there, more intense, like he just said. I think, they had tunnels. A lot of those old towns had tunnels, right? Cheyenne has tunnels. Butte had tunnels from the mines to these types of places. And the miners could afford the girls in the basement. And I think the miners let you know they're there. They use the darkness to their advantage in the basement. And Jason said he pulled out of an Estes. I wasn't even that long in. That was the first place I've been touched. I was touched multiple times, and I couldn't do it, and I had to come out. But we investigated the second night as teams. So it was Gina and Michelle were off, and Jason and I were downstairs in the basement. We've gone to filming in white light. We had turned the light. We had the light on, and we're using the spirit box, or we're using something, and it said headlamp. Like turn off your headlight or something. Anyway, it ended up going back to lamps on mining helmets. And I was like, they may see that light on the camera as that. And we turned it off, and the feeling in the room changed 180 degrees. It went from everything's good to they use the darkness to their advantage.
Yep.
That's interesting. And well, it's scary too.
Yeah,
When
it was.
darkness is to anybody, it kind of is terrifying, especially when you can't see your hand right in front of your face. I mean, it's
Right.
like you're just completely immersed in complete dark, and that is scary. And yes, I've been in a few underground situations on tours where they'll always do that. Here, now let's turn off the lights. And let's see how really dark it is. And it was a mining situation too. And it's like, oh God, it's just like, where do you walk? I mean, you don't walk. You just sit there and you don't know where to walk. Forward, backward and if something touches you, you run into the wall or whatever. Very creepy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these miners, I went on a tour up in Deadwood, South Dakota, and like the mines up there, they wouldn't have light while they were working. They would work in the dark, and they were given one candle for their lunch break that they could sit down in candlelight and eat. And other than that, they were just mining rock off, these walls with pickaxes. So I think, like Aaron said, they can definitely use the dark to their advantage. And up in Butte, they definitely did.
I think that's amazing. I don't even know how anyone could pick. But do you think their eyes acclimated to a point where the darkness, for some reason, they could maybe see in the darkness? I don't know. I don't know much about, eyes and how they can adjust or not. That's just creepy. But yeah, when we were, and I was photographing in this mine. Where were we? Somewhere over in Europe recently. And I just thought, I did capture, by the way. People can say it all they want to, that it could have been something else, but, I do capture periodically what I would call intelligent orbs, flying through, or the way that they direct themselves to me. They're not all bugs, and they're not all birds or bats or anything like that. They are legitimately energy, lights up balls of energy. And there'd be times when I would capture or see stuff like that. So you can tell it's kind of creepy. But I want to turn this now to haunted objects, because we talked a little bit about or objects that you picked up at places that were known to be haunted. We could go either direction on that. And so both Arron and Jason had showed me a couple items that were very interesting, and I thought maybe we'll take this time to talk about each of them, and then maybe get into whether you think there's any hauntedness or what might be it regarding them. So I don't know, Arron, do you want to start first?
Yeah, it goes back to the Dumas brothel. We've gone to Labor Day is our big weekend to really travel, and we've gone to 2 nights at a location. So we did 2 nights at Dumas brothel. As we go through, we did this 1.5-hour tour that the owner is absolutely amazing. He knows all the history of this place. Brothel from 1889 to 1982. Super cool. During the Prohibition time, they did run liquor through there. So we were able to contact him. It was the day after our second night, and I emailed him and, hey, did you get everything that we left for you? And here's, all this. And then I asked about some of this Prohibition stuff that they had. And they have Prohibition liquor that's still there, crates of it. And we worked out a deal with him. So we were able to purchase each of us a bottle of this Prohibition liquor. It says lacquer, finish polish, but they had different labels for like a car polish and furniture polish and all this stuff, because of course they couldn't label it liquor, but it's all the same company with all these different super cool.
So that is actual Prohibition liquor in that bottle.
Prohibition liquor. You can see where it's like settled, and I don't know. I was really hoping that I didn't break the bottle on the way home, because it was inside the truck, and I'm like, I could just imagine what it smelled like.
Oh God! Oh my God! Well, and the thing, and no pony jokes here with these people putting stuff in bottles that appear to be that way. It is the real deal, right? What year is that? Maybe around again 1800 or something. 80
Prohibition was the 20s, right? So we're going to say somewhere 1920s.
1920s. Okay.
So it's still over 100 years old.
My God.
And, you can see how everything like all the colors and everything are the same. They're not mixing anything. They're not doing. They have lots of cool stuff. They had like bricks of the building that previous owners had put together so they could sell those. I know Jason has some cool stuff. Something I want to touch on real quick that I didn't show you is like these little. I'm gonna figure out where my finger is. These little
behind you
right here.
Are those arrowheads?
No, these are bits of stuff from the Gettysburg battlefield.
Oh, wow.
So you can purchase them at one of the stores in town. We went to Gettysburg in July as a group, just a vacation. We did some investigation, but really it was a vacation. Families came. It was a great time. But yeah, that's probably the best. There's some little lead Indians that were on a table, and it's pretty. Just a quick story.
Oh no, go ahead.
Bez, Jason's wife, was like, "Hey, Aaron, look," knowing that I have lots of native stuff from growing up there. It's like, those are pretty cool. And then she's a photographer, and they had an old small ammo cane that you would develop stuff in. And then there was also a picture of like a pin drawn picture of like a doctor sawing someone's leg off. So Michelle saw the picture and said something, and Desiree was over there with her, and she's like, "Aaron, look at these." And I was like, "Oh, what's this?" I'm like, "Oh, look at this." So it kind of worked out where we were around this table and we were each finding something for someone else, which is pretty neat because Jason and we have this synchronicity thing that's happened over the last couple of years, and it just worked out for everyone there. It was really great. But he has some cool stuff too.
Oh, hang on, Jason. Hang on.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna go at Aaron a little bit, and then we'll get to you. Hang on. Okay. So yeah, poor Jason, always put up on the shelf. No. Yeah, I know. Gee whiz, we should have Jason. What is it? Elf on the shelf. It's Jason on a shelf.
Yep, there we go. Put Jason in the corner.
Nobody puts Jason in the corner.
Nobody puts Jason in the corner. So, Aaron, with these objects that you have in there, have you had any type of, and even would Gina know, probably, obviously, but have you had any kind of energy occurrence because of that? You know what I'm getting at? Have you had any kind of hauntings in your place? Do you think that something that you have there has held on to some type of energy, and that, what do you think?
My studio is in the basement, and every now and then I can be sitting upstairs and I feel I hear something down here, but nothing has made itself known. When I first went out to Gettysburg in 2020, I went by myself. I came back with one of those, and I was showing Gina, and she's like, "This isn't supposed to be with this other stuff." So there's lots of little bits in there, and she's like, "This button is not supposed to be with this other stuff." So it's maybe that button is a Confederate soldier, and the rest of the stuff is Union, is what I was thinking. So she did pick up on that when I brought that in, but she stays out of this room. She doesn't really come in unless we're doing a little meeting or something and we got to use Zoom or whatever. But she hasn't said there's anything here. Our house is pretty, I go through and kind of a few times a year cleanse the house and do some stuff. And so if it is, it can stay in this room with me.
Yeah, pretty mild to the, or just, I'm going to say at peace, but calmer energy. And they probably pick up on that too. I had just purchased this, and you may be aware of this harmonica over in the Netherlands a few months ago, and it was a haunted harmonica, and it was from the opposition, from the Nazis. But I mean, it's a big story. Got filmed in a movie because of it, because there was a lot of things that happened because of that, including almost being run over by a personless car.
You almost got run over and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, you probably remember the story.
Yep.
But it also, I'm going to add to that because you might not recall, because I never talked about it. I did put it on the Facebook. Here's the really weird part about it, though. So you guys both know what it feels like to electrify and feel tingly and to have this energy. You can feel it. Well, when I was at my husband's uncle's grave at Henry Chappelle over, I believe, God, I don't know if it's on the border of Belgium and Netherlands, but anyway, I'll have to relook it up. But anyhow, I electrified. I went, my whole body electrified. And then it came to this train of events after that. But what was very, very interesting, even after all was said and done, 2 months after we got home, I was the only one standing by Vincent's grave, his uncle's grave over there. And he fought in the Nazi war, okay, that World War II. He fought in it. He died in it. I started asking him questions. I wish I knew, I wish I knew, I wish I knew, all this stuff, right? And 2 months later, out of nowhere, nobody knew this conversation. Nobody heard my questions. We just came home and just kind of, look, I got this haunted harmonica. Okay, look, I almost got run over, kind of thing. A person from Kansas contacted my husband on Facebook, I think, an email, and he said, my grandfather was your uncle's best buddy in the Nazi war. My grandfather lived, your uncle died, and but by the way, I have a folder, and I'd like to give it to you. And so in the folder, there's images, but I just recently looked at them. Was every question I asked. Were you buried here? He was actually buried twice, yes, and he was actually where we were standing. Because when you're in a cemetery full of headstones that look the same, you wonder if they do a mass grave and just throw them in there. Excuse the way I
right.
Say that, but place them in there nicely, into rows and then just bury them up. Nope, they're actually all seriously buried where they were. I asked about how he died, where he died, the whole 10 yards, and in that folder, which had confidential documents, don't know how this guy got a hold of them, by the way, don't know why he held onto them, don't know how or what the interest was, but can you imagine, years later, after holding onto these documents for years and years and years and years, and his grandfather being his best buddy, but he lived and all this sort of thing. All of a sudden, he ponies him up and says, here you go. I found you. You're his great, whatever, grandchild, son or nephew or whatever you want to call it. And every question I ever asked was answered in that. We were shocked. We were absolutely dumbfounded. So that's why I was always curious with people, if you ever have had experiences that your answers came after the fact, something came in there, something like Jason came into your view, like the gal being, in this accident and all these sorts of things, how these messages come to us. So it's just very interesting, but really weird and creepy. We're both still very taken back by this to this day. Just very, and the electrified thing, I don't know if that was him standing there, but somebody also saved me. Don't know if it was him or maybe it was the guy on the harmonica. I don't know. Really weird. Jason, you're up. So you show us, let's show and tell time, Jason.
Show and tell time.
Yeah.
All right. So
show and tell.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get one of the Prohibition liquor bottles from Dumas.
Oh, you did
as well.
too? Did they have so many of them that people just don't want to buy them, or were you just gave the right price and you were able to get one?
We gave the right price.
We gave the right price, but he seemed pretty surprised. I don't know if many people have asked. I think they've all just kind of assumed, they're there and, But yeah, we got back to the Airbnb and me and Aaron were just sitting there talking. We're like, man, I really want one of those alcohol bottles. Like, it is just so unique and cool.
Yeah.
And they had probably 10 crates of them, I think, in the basement. And it's amazing they survived because the basement had flooded multiple times. Obviously crazy temperature swings, being up in Montana, right? Hot as heck during the summer, cold in the winter. So, just that these have survived for that long down there through all these different changes. We were like, we've got to see if he'll, let us buy some. So,
people are wondering right now, and I hope the answer is no, but I know people are saying, did you ever taste any of that alcohol in that bottle, and would it turn to poison after a while?
I think it would. Like alcohol, you have the old stuff, right? Barrel aged and, the wine. And they have wine cellars for a reason, right? It's a controlled temperature, controlled lighting. That's where alcohol can, become better, right? But I think sitting, like I said, through floods and drastic temperature changes, I like my eyesight. I don't know if that's an old wives' tale or if you really will, lose your eyesight off some good moonshine, right? But I'm not willing to try it. We had the guys from Booze, Brews, and Barbecues try talking to us. They were like, come on, man, you got to crack it open and try it. Me and Aaron are both like, no, but when we meet up, we'll bring the bottle and you can do a shot,
Go at it. Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So, but I like collecting, just random things. I don't want to take anything of impact, right? Or, from a location. So I've taken to, I like collecting dirt. So I just get these little vials at craft stores and, I collect dirt and label them from different spots. So I've got like Dumas Brothel. I've got dirt from Poe's Grave in Baltimore. Aaron's got that as well. One that's kind of cool is Leakin Park in Baltimore. It's the murder park. There's so many murders that have happened there and bodies stashed that they say if you go there to bury a body, you're more than likely going to dig up a body.
Oh my goodness.
It's a gnarly place. We went there, in broad daylight. And of course there's multiple parking lots for the park, right? And we just happened to pull into a parking space and we look over and there's just all these burnt remnants of a vehicle, in the parking space next to us, just melted headlights and, wiring that's, just now adhered to the concrete, right? And so Michelle starts looking it up and, we go to Murder Park and we parked right next to a murder scene. I think it was, a year ago, someone had gotten, shot in the back of the head and then the vehicle burned down. So that just kind of shows, how crazy this park really is that you can't even, go to the parking lot without parking next to a crime scene there. Had to get dirt from there.
Do you think that in that parking lot, okay, so you've got the innocent, well, I'm not going to say they're innocent. You got the victim, okay, in the car or whatever, and then you got the person who's murdering them. Do you think the person who is murdering them or the energy that comes about from that area is coming from those that were buried there, or do you think that people somehow, there are just psychos that just randomly go to these places because of whatever? Well, I don't know. Where do you think this energy is coming from?
So I don't know. There's a couple different ways to look at it. I've thought a lot about Leakin Park. I had never heard about it before we went to Baltimore. Michelle told us about it, and we were all like, "Oh yeah, we got to go check it out." I see it as two ways. Number one, you've got Baltimore, right? Huge city, high crime rate. But it's all concrete, right? It's the stereotypical concrete jungle. And then you have this big wooded park in the middle of that, so kind of just like Central Park in New York City and the high crime there. It's places to hide. It's places you can do stuff and not be observed as easily. But I also believe that places can harbor ill intent, right? There are places that are just evil. And maybe not in the demonic sense, but I think that's the easiest way to put it is bad things happen there and it attracts more bad things.
Right.
And I'll digress a little bit here. Like, in times when I've been in Iraq, we went to some buildings that Saddam Hussein had used to do some unspeakable things. We had no idea that these buildings were used for that purpose when we pulled up to them. But you got out of the Humvee and start to make entry into the building, and you could just tell this place is not good. Not in the sense that, like, you were going to get in a gunfight, but something here is not right. Just the entire vibe was bad. You get that, feeling in the pit of your stomach and just evil happened here, right? May not be demonic, but evil acts have taken place. And I really felt that at Leakin Park. I think everybody did. It was a bright, sunny day. It was beautiful out. you get out of the car and start walking around. And this is a beautiful park. If anyone's, been out east, the woods are just something different out there, just thick trees and shrubs and all that. Like I've always loved the woods out east, and it just felt bad, and I mean, you can get into the theory of ley lines, stone tape theories, holding all this energy from these, bad things that have happened there. But yeah, every single one of us was like, we're in such a beautiful place right now, and it feels horrible.
Mm-hmm. It's just creepy, because I know that feeling too. But sometimes you think in your head, oh, I must not be feeling well, or I'm making this all up, or maybe I'm just a little off today, or whatever like that. And so there's a lot of people that disregard those feelings. And then those are, like I know people that have a lot of panic attacks and a lot of anxiety all the time. And they're always anxious no matter where you go. So you can't ever tell what is what. But so let's talk a little bit about that dirt you've got in your hands there. Do you think, has anything ever occurred because of the fact that you've got these dirt samples in these vials? Do you know of anything paranormal or a little bit off that has come about because you've got these samples?
No, I've been warned by quite a few people on, the dangers of taking dirt, but honestly, I haven't had anything happen. I've never cleansed them. I haven't done anything. They've, gone into the little vial, and then I'm still figuring out how to organize them. Sometimes they're on a shelf, sometimes they're on my desk, but, yeah. And I haven't noticed anything. I've got all the artifacts, that Aaron's got in the background. I've got a couple of those display cases from, going to Gettysburg. He showed me, because I saw his collection before we went. So he took me to the store that had, the good ones. And, so I got a couple of those, and, found an old, like film negative, of a, Civil War soldier that I got, and things like that. And yeah, I've never really had anything negative happen, or any evidence of any sort of paranormal activity from this stuff. Mm-hmm. I have had a spirit follow me home before. That's one thing. Like, I don't do a lot of cleansing and stuff. It's just, I don't have the knowledge, I think, to be able to do it correctly. So I don't do it. Mm-hmm. But I do make sure, I draw boundaries when leaving a location. And one time I forgot to do that, and came home, and strange stuff started happening. My wife woke me up in the morning and said somebody took all the spoons out of our silverware drawer and put them in a circle in the kitchen.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, just weird stuff. And I had a friend over. We were watching a movie, him and his wife, and me and my wife, Des. And the kids were all back playing in the girls' room. Well, we just happened to hear, yelling there, being rowdy. And we look down the hallway, and I see this big, thick coloring book go just flying from the boys' room into the girls' room. So, of course, I holler. I'm like, hey, guys, you can't be throwing big stuff like that. Like, I'm all for roughhousing, but bring it down a little bit, like, as long as there's no hospital visits, play as hard as you want, right? And they all started crying and going, no one's in that room. We couldn't have thrown it. And so had to, do some stuff and make sure, that it left, and it did leave. And, but yeah, so that was my one time I've really had, I think, any kind of activity or, anything come home with me.
Well, and you wonder, was that after you had brought home any of these vials of dirt, or was this like not really relevant to?
No, this was years before. I didn't really have any kind of like haunted or, paranormal artifacts at that time. Mm-hmm. I always just kind of, I never really thought about it, to be honest. Like I said, how it got started is I always just kind of appreciated the places I was in, never really thought about taking a memento. But, as I get more into it, I like having souvenirs.
There's places here, or just in other places, they don't even want you to take a rock from the shore. There's in Minnesota here, and a lot of people aren't aware of this. I'm an artist, so I'm up north, several miles away, and I go up there, every year to fulfill my duty of being an artist. But anyway, there is a couple lakes And you would think they'd be they are plentiful with rocks. There's plentiful. You could never run out of rocks there. But there, where I stay, they actually had a sign up, and their sign was, "Please do not take any of the rocks from the surrounding, Lake Superior or whatever, these lakes that are up there by and beyond Duluth, going up there, because I don't know what the reason is, but do not take a rock." And there are places where you're not supposed to take, other places, other countries, other wherever, you're not supposed to take, it's because it'll bring you bad luck. There are people actually returning rocks because they took one from the shore of ABCD or whatever the case may be. Now, I take rocks all the time, so I take shells when I'm down in Florida, because there's so many shells. They don't say don't take a shell. They say, please take some shells. We've got plenty. It is interesting though, isn't it? How some of these things sometimes. Just a couple days ago, I discovered a vinegar bottle in my cupboard was turned upside down, where the opening, the tip of it was turned upside down, and like that. I do not ever do that with things in my house. I don't need to. I discovered it and asked my husband why he turned the vinegar bottle upside down, and he said, "I never touched the vinegar bottle." And I'm like, well, the thing is upside down, and so periodically I will get some visitors in here, but well, and then finally, why don't we talk about, and then we're going to wrap up. We'll have to have you back again. How you two came together, talk about your show, talk about how people can reach out to you and all of that. So
I'll start with how we came together, and then I'll let Arron go into the show. As we said, I'm a member of the Cheyenne Knights of Pythias. It is in Cheyenne, kind of a famously haunted building. That's how I became a member, was when I was running my own team. I came across it and investigated, and they asked me to join. So now I kind of head up the, coordinating the paranormal investigations that happen there. And Way Out West Paranormal had, asked to come in, and we escort, the teams that come in, just because of all the, artifacts and stuff we have in the building, and insurance, all that fun stuff. Ended up, escorting Way Out West through a few times, and, we just clicked. I liked the way, they did business. They were very respectful, very meticulous with how they investigate. Not everything was a spirit, and, nothing was a demon, right? Which is big, especially now. Demons seem to be the big hot button on YouTube. Always, yep. They had advertised an opening in their team, and I saw that and applied and said, look, we've worked together a few times. I'd love to, come try out for the team. And so they gave me the chance to, come in and investigate with them, and I think we clicked really well. And now we're like a family. We call it our little paranormal family, and it's been wonderful.
And Arron, take it from there.
So from there, Jason comes into the team. I had been wanting to do a podcast for a while. I was talking to him. He's like, "Oh, I've been wanting to do one for a while." And, so we talked about it, and then we're like, okay, October 16th, we're going to start. So we picked a date, and, this last October, we celebrated a year. So now we're a year and 4 months into it. A new guest every week. We have paranormal teams. We have cryptid hunters. We had a cryptid museum on just recently. We're willing to talk to anyone. If there's anything paranormal, because, that all falls under it, right? It's not just ghosts. It's cryptids and aliens and anything that's not normal, and then owners from haunted locations. Like, we just want everyone to learn about people and places. It's something that we have a passion for, and we like to pass that on. So we started out under one name. There were some issues with that. We changed names. So Unraveling the Darkness is our podcast, and we're every Wednesday we go live. It's a live show, Facebook and YouTube, and we've had you on, which was a great show.
Oh, it's fun.
And it's something that we like to do, and it helps us break up the week. Jason kind of has a job where he's in it all day, my job has gotten to a very political side of things, and I try to stay out of that. And I'm just like, this breaks up the week, and it's something that I like with like-minded people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps the community too, because the thing is when I started also doing this, like you guys, I didn't know where it was going to go, or I just wanted to tell my stories. I just wanted to vent. I wanted to vent out things that were happening that I just knew were not of a obvious, could explain situation. And getting to know both of them has been just an absolute delight. Yes, thank you for having me on. It was great. I love it. They're great podcasters, very interesting shows, and very wonderful guests as well. So, and you can be found on, let's see, Facebook. Is that right?
Facebook, and you can find us as a podcast on Unraveling the Darkness, and as a team, Out West Paranormal.
Mm-hmm. And I will have all this in the show notes, and we'll have you back. Very interesting, and I'll be curious to see if you pick up any more things along the way, because you never know. I never was ever going to buy a a harmonica that is obviously full of energy from the opposition, obviously, and stuff. I'm not that type to pick up haunted objects in general, but I know one thing: it was speaking to me. It wanted me to purchase it. I couldn't get my mind off of it, and therefore I needed to have it. And so I just really don't know why. But with you and your guys' objects too, especially that prohibition alcohol and the crazy stuff that they had to label it just to be able to sell it. Very, very fascinating. Right. Well, on that note, gentlemen, thank you so very much. We'll have you back, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.